This is the Real Estate Investing 365 podcast, your go-to source for real estate investing strategies so you can start living the life you want and get where you want to go. With your host, Justin Hanna.
Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Investing 365. Today, I'm with my buddy, Justin Cambra. He lives up in Washington. He works for Amazon. And say hello, Justin. How's it going?
Hey, it's going good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it. So you were just telling me before we got on that you just got back from a little Milwaukee trip looking at some properties you have out there. And I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. But first, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and where you come from and how you got started in real estate?
All right. Sounds good. I grew up kind of a farm kid, grew up on a small farm, then went to Washington State, had an ag business degree out of there. Kind of worked the first couple years out of college in the ag industry. Then I moved into retail, grocery industry. And then I got my MBA at Berkeley. And then that's when I joined Amazon. That was roughly about 6 years ago when I joined Amazon. But in terms of real estate, I was kind of thinking about this before the show. I remember back playing Monopoly with my grandma way back when. So that kind of got me into it. So I've always been thinking about money and about real estate. And then, joining Amazon and, since with the tech era and all the stocks going up, I had all this money coming. I was like, well, I need to take that and put it to action.
Yeah.
I got my first house hack here 3 years ago.
Okay. I played a Monopoly when I was a kid too, but I don't think I ever really correlated like real estate investing in real life and buying Park Place or whatever, it was just Monopoly and I liked playing it. And I usually felt like I won, but that's probably because everybody let me win. But that's cool.
Yeah, you got to get those greenhouses and then you got to transfer them into the red.
Yeah, and that's what I thought when I got older, but when I was little, I didn't even put two and two together. So that's good. Yep. It's a good game for sure. So did you know anybody growing up that really was into real estate or not really?
Not really. I didn't really meet anybody until really probably a couple years ago. Yeah, after I bought my first, I really didn't even know about the house hack stuff until I got my first one. And then, getting into bigger pockets and hearing, Brandon Turner use that term, I was like, oh, that's kind of what I'm doing,
Yeah, no, especially up in Seattle market, I'm sure. I mean, even 6 years ago, it wasn't nearly as expensive, but it was still more pricey than Milwaukee or the Midwest, I'm sure,
Yeah, there's an extra digit on the end in Seattle versus Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so that's your history. Why don't you tell me about your first deal? It was a house hack, like you said, but it was in Seattle. Tell me anything else about it.
Yeah, it was like I was saying before, like I had a bunch of stock that was going to come my way, and I was like, okay, I've been kind of doing the traditional route of saving up money, putting into stocks, but it just never felt like it got anywhere. So I was like, well, when I buy this next place, I got to do the and one. And so I was really hunting around for a duplex, found a duplex, and the and one was the duplex, but then also this one was actually on 2/3 of an acre. And so as soon as I saw this place, I jumped on it right away. And I used my agent that I had used a couple years back when I sold my house. And he helped me find the property and he helped me put the offer in on it.
Okay, so this was strictly for a real estate investment because you had bought a primary residence prior to this.
I had a primary residence and then that's in California. And when I moved to Washington, I sold that and I was living here in an apartment. And so after living in an apartment for a couple of years, I was like, hey, I want to take, have my money work for me versus, just giving somebody rent checks every month,
Yeah, for sure. So was it right in Seattle or in a surrounding area?
It's a suburb of Seattle. It's kind of by the Seattle airport.
Okay, cool. Well, it's surprising that you got such a big lot there with a duplex.
Exactly. Yeah, me too. It was kind of it's not like a super glamorous house. Like when I bought it internally, it looked nice for the 1980s. But in my mind, I was like, hey, if I can rent that other part out, that's going to help cover the mortgage. And then there's land there. So like in the long run, we could do something, put more property or more buildings on it.
Yeah. Okay. So how much did you get that place for? Do you remember?
Yep. So it ended up closing at 535, but it was quite the ordeal. So the way it worked was, and this was at the when everybody was doing escalators. It's not as it's we're still doing it nowadays up here, but the original list price of the property was 450, and then I had a 10K above whoever else came in up to 600,000,
Okay.
but ended up getting it at 535.
Explain what escalators are. That's part of the bidding war kind of thing, right?
Exactly. So in competitive markets, what people do is or what the listing agent will do is will say, hey, I'm going to take all these offers on a certain date. Usually it's probably about a week after they list it.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically it gives enough time for everybody to come in, check out the property, formulate what they want to bid on it. And so what you end up doing if you do these escalators, it's basically because everyone's got to get their offers all in the same time. It's a way for you to kind of get one leg up on somebody. So basically, I put an offer saying I'll pay 10,000 above anybody else up to 600,000. So theoretically, if somebody put in 590, I would have said, hey, I'll pay 600,000 because 600 was the max of my escalator.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard of that. People doing that before. I think my aunt and uncle that I have, they did that on a property in Boise,
Mhm.
this was only maybe a year and a half ago. So it was real hot there, the same as it was in Seattle when you bought this place. So,
Mhm.
all right, cool. Well, I'm glad you got it. So that's pretty pricey. How was the rents? What did you rent out the other side for?
And so on the bottom, it's a top bottom duplex. I live in the 1 bedroom, 1 bath. I still live there today. I rent out the bottom. It's a 3 bedroom, 1.5. At the time when I first got it, I ended up renting it for 2,300.
Oh, sweet.
But
Okay.
I've since converted it to an Airbnb unit.
And that probably makes you more money monthly than regular rent.
TBD. I haven't gone through a full year yet. Definitely, like right now, I'm killing it in Seattle. You know, the vacation. A lot of people coming in town for vacation, so I'm doing really good right now. Covers more than my monthly mortgage, so life is good.
Oh,
But
sweet.
in the winter, in February, like I had a super low month. I netted $300, so it's kind of feast or famine in Seattle here.
Right. Yeah. When people rent like a standard lease, it's more just stable, less risky, I guess, because it's like every month you're going to have the same thing. But Airbnb, you can't really count your ducks until the end of the year. But most of the time, it seems like you can make quite a bit more on that. Did you, um, did you furnish the whole place? Obviously, you had to do that. So that's kind of an added expense to the Airbnb as well, right?
Exactly. So I probably put in about 25,000 to get it rent ready. Like I said, when I bought it, it looked good for the 1980s, right?
Yeah.
So we basically gutted all the bathrooms in the kitchen, did new premium vinyl planking floor, did a paint job, and then ordered a bunch of stuff off of Amazon and put it all together.
You guys get a discount on that? You got an Amazon discount code?
I wish. I mean, we do. I mean, it's only equates up to $100 a year, so it's nothing huge, but it is something.
Oh man, what a bummer, but that's okay. Okay, so how did you end up financing this deal?
So on this deal, I did a FHA loan, and so I only had to have 3.5% down. With closing fees and everything, I want to say it was around 25-ish thousand, kind of out of pocket for that deal.
Okay, sweet, and it works out because you still live there, so that's cool. And you said you found it with an agent that you used to sell your first house with, correct?
Yep. hmm
All right, and then what about property manager? Do you use a property manager now or then or what?
So when I first was doing the long-term rental, I was the property manager, and so I had to kind of learn everything on the fly. And so I remember like I put an internal work email out saying, "Hey, if anyone's looking for a rental, come check this out." I also put it on the same time on Craigslist. And so when I ended up, having the open house, the first guy that came in was the Amazon guy. He's like, "I'll take it," and I was like, "Sweet, okay." He's like, "Where's the paperwork?" I'm like, "Oh, well, let me get back to you." He's like, "Well, what's the security deposit?" And so then my girlfriend was there, and I was like, "Wait, come over here. What should we do for the security deposit?" And we're like, 500 is what we thought. And they were like, "Well, he wants some pets, so we'll call it 750." And so we turned back around to him. We're like, "Yep, we need 750." And he's like, "Boom, here's the money."
You're
And
like,
in hindsight, that was way too low.
yeah.
So you should do at least a month's worth for the security deposit. But I learned kind of everything as I was going. I ended up doing, I think it was LegalZoom or something like that for the lease document.
Okay, so you just typed it in there, and I'm sure, yeah, it was just a standard lease or whatever, right?
Exactly.
So
Although
what?
this guy was kind of peculiar. He was like, "Well, there's not very many rules in here. We should have rules about quiet time and stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, what do you suggest?" And then I kind of just was like, "Those sound good to me. We'll put them in there."
Yeah, well, that's cool. Did he end up working out? How long did he stay for?
He stayed for about a year and a half, and then he was an Amazon guy. He got hired by LinkedIn and moved away. So once he moved out, then I was like, well, if we're going to do something, this is the time to do Airbnb. Worst
Okay.
case scenario, if it doesn't work out, we move down to that unit and have the nice furnishings.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So why, real quick, you said you should have at least a month's worth of security deposit. Why is that? Why do you say that?
So if they're to move out and there's damage or whatever, you're holding on to that security deposit. So, if he caused, say it's $5,000 of damage, at least I've got 23. If I had 1 month's rent, I'd have 2,300 worth of that, and then I'd only have to get the remaining 2,700 from him.
Yeah, it kind of gives you a little leeway too, even if they don't, right, trash it or whatever, but it's like they just move out in the middle of the night. Well, it gives you some time, I guess, to get new tenants in there and whatever. So,
That, and it's kind of the incentive of, like, when you leave, like, how good are you going to clean it, right? Because he was very thorough when we did he was like, "Hey, I want to walk through checklist." I'm like, "Okay, let me find a walkthrough checklist."
yeah.
So I printed one off the internet and we went through and we walked through everything. And so at the very end, we had that same checklist back out and we kind of went through it and checked it all off. But yeah, it ended up working out pretty good. He ended up cleaning it pretty well. Back in my mind, I was kind of thinking about Airbnb anyway. So it all, the areas that weren't that good, no big deal. We're going to tear the carpet out anyway.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's fast forward a little bit. Where are you at today? Like how many units you have? Have you stuck with long-term Airbnb? What do you got going on?
So in Washington, I focus on Airbnb. So I have 4 properties here and 4 Airbnb units. And then, but most of my stuff is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've got 13 properties there, 34 doors. And then in Michigan, kind of Detroit area, I've got 2 properties there, 4 doors.
All right. All right. So how did you end up investing so far away? You said you're from the Midwest somewhere, right? So,
Actually, I'm from Seattle,
oh,
but
from Seattle.
yeah, I lived in the Midwest in Oklahoma City for a while.
Okay. So how did you land on the Milwaukee market?
So after I bought my primary residence, I was like, okay, I want to do more of this real estate investing, and nothing in Seattle really pencils around here. And the rent to purchase ratio around here is, probably the 0.5, 0.6, definitely sub 1%. So my brother lived in Yakima, Washington, which is eastern Washington, a couple hours east of here, and ended up buying an 11 unit over there for my second property. And then I was like, okay, I want to continue to buy. Then Yakima, I was like, well, these numbers don't really make that much sense. Just so happened at that point in time, I was listening to Bigger Pockets. There was a guy talking about Milwaukee. I was like, oh, what is this Milwaukee? And he's like, duplexes, he's buying them for 60 to 80,000. I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
So every year I do this golf trip to Madison area, and I normally fly into Chicago O'Hare. So instead of flying to Chicago O'Hare that year, I went into Milwaukee. Found an agent online, went to a few properties. As soon as I saw a few of them, saw what the rents were and the cash flow, I was like, no brainer. And so I was just all in ever since then. Try to buy as much as I can.
Okay. So you do you still have that 11 unit in Yakima?
I actually sold that. I 1031 that one into more properties in Milwaukee.
Okay. Okay, cool. So you you got there, you got to Milwaukee, you started looking at properties, and you just found an agent off the internet. So that's kind of like the hard part. A lot of people have. It's like, well, I don't know anybody there. How am I going to find an agent? And I run into the same thing because an agent and your team there is very important. So how did that agent work out, first of all? And if they didn't, how did you go about finding a better team in the area?
So the agent, I don't really do any business with them today. I used them for a couple transactions, but the way I found them was, because I'm remote, I had to do everything on the internet. So I just went to a bunch of websites, and it turned out the local company there that was the best, that had the best website. Then I did it, reached out to a guy there, and that's how I ended up finding him. It's kind of hard in these Midwest areas where you have to do a high transaction flow. And so with some of the realtors, it's a very transactional. It's like, they're not making a ton of commission on 60 or 80,000. So it's depending on how busy they are with their time determines how much time you're going to get. And so the guy was good. He helped me get me rolling, but I wanted a little bit more mentorship, more kind of coaching to help me, better boots on the ground because I was so far away. And so then as I was, researching on my own, then I just started looking out and, putting in offers directly to the seller agent.
Okay, so you have 13 doors in Milwaukee, and were you looking in Milwaukee and your other out-of-state market at the same time, simultaneously, or did you kind of like go to Milwaukee first and then go to what was the other one you said?
Detroit area.
Detroit area.
Yeah.
Did you go simultaneously or separate?
Separate. So it was about a year later when I did the Detroit area.
Okay, and so how is Detroit? Because everybody always bags on Detroit and everything's how it's so horrible, but it's probably, there's great cash flow there, but you must really have to have a good boots on the ground, I would assume, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I actually just have one guy that I use there. He's my property manager and he's my agent. But there's, definitely there's cash flow there, but it's actually not as good as Milwaukee. But I think, people might laugh about this, but I think there could be higher appreciation in Detroit than there is in Milwaukee in the long run.
Yeah, and I think so too, maybe because they're doing a ton of renovation and what do they call it? Gentrification in all kinds of different areas throughout Detroit, right? That guy, what is it? The Rocket
Dan
Mortgage
Gilbert.
guy, huh?
Yeah, I think it's Dan Gilbert, I think.
He's like putting billions in there, right?
Yeah. I flew into town, I walked the area, and I'm like, this is an amazing area. The true, the Detroit that people talk about, it's still there, but it's not, the nucleus of the city is live and vibrant and up and coming. Kind of the next ring outside of that, that is the rough part of Detroit for sure. I'm the ring outside of that. I don't actually buy in Detroit. I buy on the periphery. So I have one in East Point and then I have one in Warren. But I'm definitely looking in that area. But it's the cash flow is better in Milwaukee, but I kind of want to diversify my holdings to some extent.
Okay, so when you pick these different areas, this is kind of a question for me. Before you start making deals, like what's the timeline? So you find the area and then do you take a trip out there before you start making some offers? Or do you, find some properties online, tell your agent what you want, and then he sends them to you, you make the offers, and then you fly out? Like, how does that work?
So for me, since I kind of had some experience with the Milwaukee one, what I ended up doing there is I got on a few people's lists. I started looking at properties and looked to see who like the selling agents were. At the same time, I was reaching out to people on Bigger Pockets saying, who's some good people to connect with in the Detroit area. Once I started seeing kind of what the properties were, running them through analysis and seeing, okay, yeah, they're profitable, I could make money on them. Then I flew out there after kind of coordinating to meet up with a few people, meet them in person, walk a few properties, and see, kind of how the relationship would work out. So of the people I met with, there's this one guy, it's kind of a hardworking family guy, and I just really connected with him, and so I've been working with him.
Okay, cool. So, and I assume you use property management out there for all your properties?
Exactly. Outside of Washington, all of it is managed by a property manager.
All right. So how about what's your most recent deal? What's the most recent thing you've done that we can kind of walk through a little bit?
Most recent deal, I just did my first partnership deal let's see, I think we closed in June. So just about 2 months ago.
Okay, let's dig into that a little bit. Partnership deal. Did you know this partner?
Yep. There's actually 4 people in this one. And so I knew them through work, and over the course of the last 2 years, they've been watching I talk about real estate wherever I go. And, the more I told them about it, the more they're getting interested. And then they're like, hey, we want in, tell us how much money, let's do a deal together. At the same point in time, I was kind of running out of money, but I still wanted to grow my business.
All right.
And so I was like, oh, okay, let's try this partnership out. And so pretty simple, straightforward. We just agreed to do $15,000 each, and we do it in Milwaukee because that's what I knew most. And so pretty much I go find the deal, get the agent, get the property manager, run the analysis, get the insurance set up. And since most for these other guys, it's kind of their first deal as well. And so I just kind of coach them through the process. But
Okay.
ended up being a 6-unit for $152,000 is what we ended up purchasing.
Okay, cool. So you kind of run the whole thing. You find the deal. You guys pull your money together, and then you each own 25% of the property?
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, it kind of, you're doing a little bit more of the work for the same amount of return, but at the same time, you were kind of running low on cash anyways. So both people have benefits, right? And they get to learn from you, and it seems to work out okay.
Exactly. I mean, would I do it again at those terms? No.
No.
I think I've got 3 other deals in the hopper that are more favorable on my side, just because I'm bringing a lot of the work to the table.
Right.
I've noticed that there's a lot of work that goes into the education and the training, and so I'm trying to figure out ways for me to expand where it is mutually beneficial, but there's some incentive for me to use them as a partner.
Okay. So how did you guys end up financing this deal? Since you guys are partners, did you set up a LLC and then get a loan in the LLC name, or how did you do that?
Exactly. So this one's a 6-unit, so it's a commercial property. We ended up using the primary bank that I use is U.S. Bank, so went to them, got a commercial mortgage using under the LLC, and then we ended up getting, I think it's a 10-year term and 25-year amortization on that one.
Okay, 10-year term. That's pretty good, I guess. But especially from U.S. Bank. Why did you go with U.S. Bank instead of like a small local portfolio lender or something like that? Any reason, or are you just used to them?
So in most of like the local credit unions only want to do business with people from Wisconsin. So I've called around to a few people, and they're like, "No, you got to be a Wisconsin resident." I have used one that I got through a connection through a Bigger Pockets person, a bank there. But when I'm doing more and more business with U.S. Bank, I asked them for a 10-year. Based on the business I'm doing with them, they granted a 10-year term on this with a 25-year amortization. So we're like, hey, that's a good deal. Let's go with that.
Yeah, no, that's cool, because a lot of times what people say the rub is with big banks or national banks is, if you want to do something outside of the norm, it's kind of hard to get them to approve it because it's got to go up the chain and and they don't know you personally or whatever. But since you've done so much deals with them, it sounds like you're able to get a good deal, and they're able to bend the parameters a little bit for you. So sweet, that works out. And it's probably easier than these small banks a lot of times too, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, when you on the commercial loans, it's definitely a lot easier in terms of analysis and the actual signing of the documents. So, I mean, I go into the bank, I'm in and out in under 5 minutes. It's like 2-3 signatures, and we're on our way.
So did you guys have to secure the loan with any of your guys' personal income and such, because it is an LLC and it didn't have any income yet, right?
Correct. On this one, we're still personally liable for it.
Okay.
I mean, long term, we want to get bigger deals where you can get the Fannie and Freddie money where it's non-recourse loan, but these are recourse loans.
Okay. Right on. So, what is some mistakes you think you made in buying this property? Is there anything new that, or anything you can think of that you maybe not to do next time?
Mistakes on this one.
Justin's like, no, man, I'm good. I'm perfect. I do great.
Yeah, I mean, I made mistakes on other ones, but I think on this one, uh, so on this one has different kind of heating units for the property. And I actually never physically saw this one before we bought it. I just saw it when I went on the trip a couple weeks ago. So they have these different kind of heating units that are pretty expensive. So everything's good when it's running, but if they break down, then they're more expensive.
Are they like boiler system or something?
I forget the term of them, but they're all on the roof of this building, and so it's definitely not a boiler, but it's basically an individual unit for each of the units. So there's 6 of these heat exchanger or whatever on the roofs. We did luck out. It came up in the inspection. One of them was bad, so they replaced one of the 6. Come to find out, that was almost $7,000. So we lucked out that we got that fixed during the findings.
Yeah. Okay. And so you didn't even see this property at all before you bought it. You just trusted your property manager that, hey, it's in a good area. You see the pictures. You were kind of familiar with the area. So your partners were like, yep, sure. If you say it's good to go.
Exactly. And I use the same inspector for everything. So like we know each other, and then I can ask him like, is it like the property on 47th Street, or is it the one on Union Street? And we can kind of like, gauge how good or bad it is.
Right. Well, that's good. I mean, yeah, I guess the hardest part in investing out of state is just like getting it going. You know what I mean? Like getting that team there. But once you get established, you know everybody, and as long as you're a good business partner to work with, they'll be good and treat you well also. So that's cool. Right on.
I do actually, now that I think that I do have a mistake that came on that one.
Okay.
Because this was my first partnership deal, there's a lot of coordination that goes in. So I was learning this as we were going. And I was actually going to use a local bank for that one originally. And what ended up happening is we didn't get the paperwork in time to the other bank. And the banker was on vacation. We came back, we submitted it. We were trying to get it. We had a shorter timeline. The banker was like, I don't want to do this. And so then we had to kind of scramble, move out the close date, and U.S. Bank, came in clutch and was able to do the loan for us. But if the main thing here is not necessarily the property, but managing the partnership and getting all your documents in order, you'd be right. When you start actually getting into the financials and the bank auditing you, it's a lot of little pieces of information that they ask for that can take a while to get put together.
Yeah, I could imagine. Some people are weird too about their finances and like sending all those documents and get kind of goofy. For me personally, I don't really care. It's like, if I don't send it in, I don't sign this paper, I don't get the deal. So you might as well just do it. But I'm sure that could come up if you start partnering with more and more people, and they get kind of goofy and not as on point as old Justin Cambra here. So their stuff's not ready to go.
If I was on point, we wouldn't have ran into that issue. But yeah. But yeah, it was just like we were talking about. None of us, we all send in separately to the bank our records. So,
okay.
I have no idea what they're doing good. They're 2 of the 3 guys are older than me. They're definitely more net worth than I am. So I'm not worried about that. But yeah, we each all sent them in separately. The bank reviewed them all, and then we're like, yep, we're good to go.
Cool. All right, great. So let's see. You kind of mentioned earlier that you kind of wanted to get into bigger deals, like get into Fannie and Freddie, like non-recourse deals. So is that where you're headed, more into the syndication route, or you want to continue on your own? What's the 5-year plan for Justin?
Right now, I'm actually just starting up a wholesale business. And so actually my first mailers went out today. So they'll drop next week. And so that's kind of my immediate term. And really the logic around that is like, I had, my bundle of money is kind of gone now. So now I need to generate more cash flow to buy more real estate. So I'm going to try to lock in a couple wholesale deals per month. That money that kicks off, one will help, I'll drive it back into the wholesaling business to do more marketing, but the rest of that money will be used to start doing more purchasing, but via the BRRRR model. And then that way I can continue to recycle that same cash flow.
Okay, so you're just going to build up your units. You're going to stick with smaller multifamily, or you're going to try to get bigger apartment complexes?
On the BRRRR, I'll probably stick to the 1 to 4 units, and then depending on how much cash flow comes in at the end state, I'll probably start getting into some of these syndication deals, just for the passiveness of it, and because it's getting now. I mean, with the 19 properties and the 43 doors here, like just the transactions and property management, the bank accounts, and keeping people up to date, it's becoming harder to manage. So I do need to get more passive, because I, like you said at the beginning, I'm still a W-2 earner, which helps me get all these loans. But until I leave my current job, I got to juggle these both at the same time. So I need to get more truly passive investments coming up.
Yeah. So is the goal for you to get enough income where you can leave your W-2 job, or are you going to stay at your W-2 and just get these on the side for when you retire? What's your goal for that?
So my goal and the next immediate goal for 2019, I'm trying to get to 10,000 net income per month. And then my kind of intermediate is 100K per month by 2022. So between now and 2022, at some point, when it becomes too much to do both, I'll leave. But I'm hoping it's under 2 years, or kind of that 2-year time frame. But it really is a function of this wholesaling. If it takes off and I'm able to do that, build up enough cash flow to buy more properties, I think I'll be fine there.
Yeah, and I would hope that you'll be able to leave Amazon. I hope your lifestyle is not so high that $100,000 a month wouldn't prevent you from leaving. So exactly. I'm sure you can make that happen.
I mean, I still live in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath in the duplex. So we're definitely. I mean, part of how I'm able to do this is that I live below my means. My monthly net isn't that much relative to what I make at my W-2. So I can parlay that money back into more real estate.
And that's a huge thing too. I talked about that 2 episodes ago with Diego Corzo, and he said the same thing, to where, he's stayed with almost, no living expenses, even though his net worth has gone over $1 million and he's bringing in however many thousands and thousands of dollars a month passively. But he's still, he has roommates and he doesn't spend a lot of money, doesn't go out. And so that's kind of key. So you can keep snowballing that money over and over again. That's kind of not a mistake that I made, but when you get married and you have kids and you get to spend, you kind of get caught up in buying these, buying a house and doing all that stuff. So I'm kind of getting some toys. I'm pretty frugal. So my wife I'm always a cheap ass in the family. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's still, I'm kind of walking some of that stuff back now, but that's good. That's awesome that you're able to do that. And real quick before we move on, the wholesaling. So if you send out your letters and you're going to get your first deal here pretty soon, I hope for you. How are you going to find a buyer for that deal? What's the best way for that?
Right now I go to a lot of meetups. And so I kind of have, I know who the flippers are in the meetups that I go to. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I'm not as worried about finding the buyer. I'm more worried about getting the deal under contract. If I can get a good deal, I'm going to be able to find a buyer.
Yeah, that's true.
At least that's what I think. So we'll see when I get there, but I'm pretty sure there's a few main guys that do a lot of transactions in the local area here. Mm-hmm. So I would go to them.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm sure if the deal is good, the buyer will come, you know what I mean? So, yep. And then I guess if a buyer doesn't come, then if it's a good enough deal, it's for Justin, I guess.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that, what I'm going to do now is probably kind of go for the cash flow. But as, it progresses, I could joint venture with people. I bring the property, they bring the expertise in terms of the rehab, and then they bring the money to fix it up. I would look at doing some of those, and then kind of the end state is I'd probably keep some of these for myself and just do my own rehabs on.
All right. Well, cool. Yeah, it sounds like a good plan. Get some more cash and buy some more units. Get to that 100K a month in 2 years. I hope you do.
Exactly.
So we'll kind of transition to the last little segment here. And what is a favorite resource as far as how do you like to learn about real estate the best? Is it books or podcasts or seminars or courses? What is your preferred method of learning?
Most of the learning that I do now is through meetups. At the very beginning, though, I'll say it was Bigger Pockets, ton of that. Not just the website and the forums there, but just podcasts. I went back to the very beginning to number one, and then caught all the way up to what it was, 300 and something right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So real estate meetups. Yeah. I don't think anybody else has said that yet. But that's probably really good because once you get kind of the basic knowledge, people get stuck in analysis paralysis and just listening to podcasts over and over and over again. But it's really getting out there and like meeting people that are doing it in real life, and that's probably where you can learn the most, I would assume. So, right on. What about an app? What's the favorite app that you have that makes life easier?
So the main one I use is Trulia. The reason for that is that it has the crime map on it. So where I'm buying at, it's tends to be crime in that area. I'm in the definitely C minus type area, and so I'm looking to see, is this light blue, medium blue, or dark blue? If it's dark blue, I probably don't want to do it. So that's the main one because it has that. It gives me the daily updates, kind of the daily feed of, hey, here's new properties. They also send me hey, here's what's the new rental items that are in that area. But the look and feel of it, I like it.
Okay, cool. So I'm sure you had to have like a certain property manager to manage those type of properties.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Okay.
Yeah, actually in Milwaukee, I have 4 property managers. It's just kind of as I've progressed, I like some, and then hey, I want to try somebody new, and then and I just kind of, as I go to certain areas, certain people don't manage properties in those areas, so I've kind of gotten segmented here to 4. But the goal here is always to have 2, so I need to whittle it down to 2 people. Have the primary with most of the properties, have a backup with some of them, just in case something happens. I've got a backup.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. I haven't heard that. I just kind of always assume just have one property manager in an area, but I guess that is a good idea to have an extra, a backup that kind of knows how you work and is ready to take on some of your deals if something falls through with the other one. So, all right, cool. So what about a mindset tip? I'm sure there's days where you kind of get down or whatever. What do you do to get yourself remotivated?
Lately, I've been listening to a lot of Ed Milet. I love his podcast. So he's always so pumped up, energized, and his guests on there are super wide ranging. And so you can kind of learn from anybody on there. So every time I, listen to one of those episodes, I'm always pumped up.
Okay, well that leads us to my next question. As an influencer, that's probably your influencer you'd recommend is Ed Milet, huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the man. Him, Ed Milet, and Andy Frisella are probably my 2 like go to. Ed Milet seems to be the guy I like to go to like. That's who I kind of aspire to be as far as his talking and his connection with people. He's very insightful and can read people well. And Andy Frisella is more like the go F and do the job and get it done. You know what I mean? Stop being a little bitch, kind of thing. And so it's a good yin and yang thing going on there.
I need to start listening to that. It's like the MF CEO or something like that.
Yeah, the mother effing CEO. So
yeah,
he's cool, man. A lot of people don't like his like brutal honesty and stuff like that, but I mean, he's done so well. He's came from nothing, owns 7 companies, and worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So he just gets straight to the point. He's not trying to make. I think his podcast is like the #1 business podcast off and on, and he takes no sponsors, and just because he just does it to help people. So it's pretty cool. So, okay. So what's one piece of advice for somebody like just getting started? How about we'll focus it towards out of state real estate investing. What's one thing for somebody that hasn't bought a property far away that you could tell them that really would help them get started?
It's kind of like two things I would say is, and this is both out of state and if you're buying in your own backyard, is that what I've seen, after doing this for a couple of years and going to these meetups and everything, is like within 90 days, if you're really researching, you're going to know about pretty much everything you're going to need to know. The rest of the real true learning comes from, getting out there and taking action. And so, up to that first 90 days, fine, do all the research, talk to people on the phone or email, whatever. But then you got to get out there and actually get, what I say is get live rounds out there and start shooting offers out there to see what happens, see how the sellers are going to respond. That's where really the true learning comes into play. Then the other thing is just, continuing to take action. There's a lot of obstacles that come up. So if you continue to take action, you're going to be able to overcome whatever obstacle comes up.
Would you say that you should work with one agent in an area, or do you recommend working with several at a time?
Let's see. If you're getting the right agent and you have enough deal flow, then yes. Nowadays, it's so easy to get, between Redfin and Trulia, Realtor, all those different Zillow and stuff. It's so easy to get those, the what I call drips, a daily email of, hey, here's the new properties. So like sometimes I'll just go direct to the seller, especially if it's a for sale by owner. I'll just go directly to them. But if you had the right agent and they're always feeding you enough to meet your needs, one's fine. But I wouldn't stop looking because maybe there's one that's better that's out there.
Right. Especially
that's how I ended up getting to the one I got now that I do. Pretty much everything runs to the guy I have now. But he was the fourth or fifth agent I used in Milwaukee.
Okay. Yeah, and especially I think when you get into commercial agents, brokers, might want to work with several at a time because their deals are a little bit different. They don't get listed right on the MLS. But for residential agents, I guess once you find a good one, it's like you might as well stick to them. I guess that's kind of like the cordial, or I don't know what the word is, proper thing to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, where can people find out more about Mr. Justin Cambra?
The main two, I'm not that social, so I'm not into like Twitter or Instagram or anything, but main area is Facebook, and then also I'm on Bigger Pockets.
Right on. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it. I mean, my mind is about taking action, and I have a saying, it's all about the power of the increment. So just keep taking that action incrementally. You'll work towards your goals there.
Right on. Well, that's good advice, Justin. I appreciate it. Thanks for being on, and we'll catch you next time. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Bye.